real good time to say hello to Joe Clark. Joe's like, man, I got to tell you, I'm just going to throw a little PSA for Joe, because Joe was just saying with his eyes a minute ago, man, the snacks here, the appetizers are really good. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, they're good.
They are good.
Very good.
Yeah, it was basically worth the trip, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and my 7-year-old daughter was liking the snacks as well, so
Yeah.
everything is good here.
She liked the video games?
Yeah, don't go into that.
You won't touch
She
that.
already dipped in my wallet.
That's okay. She's only 7 years old, pal. Get used to it.
I know, I got 2 older ones, I know.
Yeah. All right, Joe, so what we're going to start with is I just want to give you a little chance for people that don't really know who we are. Tell us, a little bit about yourself. It's the old, not just what I did on summer vacation story, but, in a nutshell, some of your history. I know you've got a very a colored history, a very bright history in the game of hockey. You've done a lot of things, and I think some people may be surprised at the breadth of things that you've been able to touch in your career. So, if you could kind of share some of that with us and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I've got probably 3 different areas to touch on. Coached in the NCAA for a couple of good programs, University of Maine and University of Denver. Coached in European hockey, elite hockey in Europe for 10 years as a head coach, and probably another 7 years as a pro coach here in the U.S. Worked with the Islanders for about 6 years as a scout, head coach in their minor league system, and also GM in their minor league system. So I'll put all of that together. It's about 25 or 26 years. Goes by pretty fast. I have a background outside of hockey. I have a journalism background. I was an editor at the Omaha World Herald for a number of years when I got out of hockey. Also was a writer, staff writer and editor, assistant city editor for one newspaper in my home state of Maine. So between it's been 80% hockey, 20% journalism. It does add up to 100, right, Arch?
It does, but I'm no math major. I'm just a hockey guy. How the hell am I supposed to know?
But a proud dad of 3. I have our oldest daughter Sydney is 16. Tanner is our son is 14, almost 15, and Ella, who is right here behind me, she's 7, going on 10. So I'm very happy to be back in Topeka, and they attend Heritage Christian School and a great school, and so it's a colorful group behind the scenes.
Everyone finds hockey a different way. For some folks, they're just sort of born into it because their parents have played or their older siblings played. Some people, they just happen to live in a hockey-rich community where they're surrounded by it and don't even think twice about it because it's always been in their DNA. But for you, what's your story? How did hockey come into your life?
Really cool story. I never played hockey until I was 12. I was on the phone with a nephew back in Maine. I grew up in Maine, and we never had the sport in the state of Maine. It was almost non-existent, and they built an ice arena in my hometown, and a bunch of buddies got together and said, let's play. And I was a goaltender. I was always a goaltender, and through high school and beyond, but I got kind of a late start, but it really wasn't available, and it was a lot of fun, but I was telling my nephew, who has his son and now plays hockey, he started I think at the age of 10, and he thinks he was late starting, so I told him my little story and said, don't worry about it, you're okay. But since then, hockey in that part of the country has grown quite a bit, and a lot of good Division I pro players have come out of the state, and so it's for. So I was very fortunate to be part of a new program in Central Maine growing up, and it's produced a lot of good hockey people over the years.
Had you played other sports prior, or you were athletically inclined to begin with?
Yeah, you know what? I was one of 8 kids. I am one of 8 kids, and I was number 6. So I have 2 younger brothers and a slew older than me. I was the only one in my family that played sports. And no one else did it. Everyone else, as time went on, was in like NASCAR and just mainly auto racing. And But other sports I played everything except football. I never played football. I actually at one point played basketball and hockey growing up, and I had to give up one. But played every sport that there was. Golf is probably my favorite thing to do outside of having my skates on. Played a ton of golf. But my son, interestingly enough, my 14-year-old son, who's almost 15, but he's going to be really big. He's 6 feet tall, and he's going to be a large boy. But he plays basketball. Never wanted anything to do with hockey. And had him. I remember in Norway at the city I was coaching in, Trondheim, Norway, carrying him around the ice, wheeling around the ice. He was like a year old, and so he's been around the sport his whole life, but he never wanted anything to do with it. So it saved me a ton of money. Saved me a lot of money.
So you start when you're 12 years old, and the first time you throw on the skates, what was that experience like?
I mean, we were all horrible. I mean, I had played, we had played kind of backyard hockey, and the reason what made me want to become a goalie is because we play like street hockey, right? And they threw me in. I wanted to get in goal because I think I could really frustrate people because no one could score on them. And granted, it's just kids play, but it was a blast. So we had a chance to put the skates on in an official capacity, and naturally went in. Didn't have a ton of coaching, but I had some really good people that helped me throughout the years. And I think really that you always look back at those years when you were a kid, and when you're coaching young players now, you got to keep those things in mind about what it's like to be, a teenager or a young pro or whatever it is. You got to keep a lot of things in mind. As adults, we doubt ourselves every day. What do you think these kids are doing? So you have to think about things like that. They're not. They may seem cocky and they know it all, like this young gentleman in front of it. No. But he's a very confident. Quinn's a very confident player and going to be a great player. But you know what? They all doubt themselves. So you got to understand that's what's going through their mind, and you don't assume that they know everything. And whether you're in the National League or not, you always have to teach. You always have to coach.
You mentioned that you had some experience overseas. How does a kid that doesn't get started even playing hockey till he's 12 in Maine find himself overseas? I mean, that's quite a jump.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and a lot of it's who you know. I was coaching at the University of Maine, and we had a lot of success in a short period of time. And I started doing summer camps in New Hampshire at Phillips Exeter Academy, and a really good friend of mine who was the athletic director there had played in Europe for a lot of years, and I was 27, 28 years old, single, no worries, and he said, "You ought to go to Europe and coach." I said, "Well, sure, that sounds like fun." So lo and behold, he made a few phone calls and set up some interviews. I flew over, I think during my second year at Maine, and we had a break. I flew over, did some interviews, got my first head coaching job in Europe in the Danish National League, and I went over there on a one-year contract and stayed 10 years.
What is it that brought you back?
I think, I don't know, I mean, you're away from your home country, and I think I wanted to get back in pro hockey over here, and 10 years is a long time. Had a great, unbelievable experience over there. I'd highly recommend it to anyone, especially if you're not tied down with a family if you're at that age. But it's just a life experience you would never ever regret going through. But I think what brought me back is I just wanted to taste pro hockey in the U.S. And so I was fortunate enough that some of the current people, for example, the Islanders, Garth Snow was the GM, Jack Capuano was the head coach. I coached both of them in college, and Garth brought me on. I was head coach of his minor league affiliate in the East Coast League, and I scouted for them as well. So he gave me an opportunity to get involved, and I still stay in touch with those guys on a regular basis.
I don't know how you ended up in Odessa, Texas,
Yeah.
but that was your introduction to the North American League, right?
Yeah, it was an interesting story. I was coaching in Norway, and a friend of mine said they're going to put a new league into the Southwest, and they named off Amarillo and Albuquerque and Odessa, Texas, and I've not really sure where it was at the time. So long story short, I got in touch with the commissioner of the league, and he liked my background. I flew over for an interview with a franchise in Midland, Odessa, Texas. But the owners owned they owned a minor league baseball franchise. It was the Oakland A's AA team in Midland, Texas, and they were purchasing a hockey team. So it was a sports entity. And I went over there, interviewed, got the job, and I was the head coach there for 3 years. And then I got fired during the third year, and then went away for a few years, got out of hockey. I went to my journalism gig in Omaha, and then I got back into it. I started scouting and started coaching. And then they called back a few years later, like 8 years later, they said, look, they had new ownership, and they said, we need a GM. We need a hockey guy as our GM. And so I was hired as a GM, and I immediately got an affiliation with the Islanders, and we started helping players get to the American League and the National League. So it was an interesting role through 2 stints in Odessa. And then during my last year in Odessa, the owners sold the team to new owners who wanted to jump to the North American League. So the whole staff, the coaching staff and the management staff in Odessa decided to stay 1 year to help these people through it. And so that was my first taste of North American League hockey, and with a junior team. And it was we didn't know anything about junior hockey. We knew nothing. It was all pro hockey, and at the minor league level, and we had no idea what we were getting into. And it's a different world.
Well, then you had somewhere along the way you made a connection with Don Stone.
Yep.
And that led you to Topeka a couple of years ago.
Right. We sat on the board of governors together. I was on the board of governors in the Central Hockey League, and when we went to the North American League, I was on the board of governors there. I got to know Don very well. And I remember Topeka hosted the Robbie Cup, right? 2012. 2011. And we went up there, we flew up and watched the level of play, because we'd never seen the league before. So that was my first introduction, and Don and Barbara Stone were very nice to us and very gracious hosts, and that's where I got to know him, and I stayed in touch. So when the new ownership took over in Odessa, they wanted everyone out. So Don brought me on board to come up here and kind of help run the business side of things, and I lend whatever expertise that I might have to his son Donald. And stayed here a couple of years, and then went to Denver last year, then returned here this year.
You know, it was interesting how things kind of panned out. The Runners had an exceptional goalie coach in Steve Briere, and obviously exceptional enough to get plucked up to Toronto to work for the Maple Leafs. But then all of a sudden, here's you, a guy that's right up your alley. That's your alley of expertise, and you found yourself in a situation personally where being back here seemed attractive anyway, and to have that all just fall into place.
Yeah.
It just
what happened was we were going to move away. We were going to move the whole family to Denver, and coaching in the NCAA is especially recruiting, because I was the recruiting coordinator and the goalie coach at the University of Denver. And when you get into it, you don't really realize how much time it's going to take away from your family. And that job is really for someone that's a lot younger than me and without a family. And we did it for a season, and the head coach and I had to sit down and say, look, I literally was in a hotel like 220 days that season, and I couldn't really justify moving my family to Denver and then say, hey, sorry, I got to go. See you later. I'll see you in a month. Because some of the recruiting trips were 18 days, 15 days, 3 weeks. And you're just on the road. That's just the job. So I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to sacrifice the time with the family, and especially with 2 teenagers, and a handful of years they're going to be out of the house, or they're going to be in college. So I didn't want to miss this. We moved back to Topeka, and Don called me and said, "Hey, is there any way you work with our goalies, because we need a goalie coach?" And I knew Steve anyway.
Sure.
And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So that's how I came on board, just helping out Tyler Johnson and a few other goalies that made their way in here. But now it's Juho Niku, and but two really good, very, very talented goalies, and having fun.
Well, there's a whole lot of things we could talk about. I know we're going to kind of start to run low on time, so real quick, I want to talk a little bit about last weekend with Wichita Falls, that series. It seems that it's kind of been part and parcel. The one night to the next, every time we've played Wichita Falls this season, they're really two different games. You know, the one game they usually tend to dominate. The next game we kind of come back and seem to hand it to them. And then, you know, it was sort of seemed like it was playing out that way this last weekend where, you know, we got the first goal and then it was close and it was, you know, 3-2 and then they just kind of pulled away. And the next night I thought we came out and we did a pretty good job. I mean, obviously we ended up on the wrong end, you know, the 2-1 loss. So on paper maybe it looks a little frustrating, but I thought the guys played really well on Saturday night and there's plenty of positives to be taken from it.
Yeah, I know. You know, the last time we played them at home, it was the same way. They came out and beat us 6-2 and you know, I think everything that they got, we kind of gave to them. And the next night, I remember that next morning, we had a really good video session, and we thought we got our point across. Here's how we got to play. And the guys went out and executed. And this past weekend, I wasn't with the team. I was on the road. I was in Minneapolis scouting, but I talked to Josh at length after the game. I watched all the goals against, and you know, more of the same. So a little bit of goaltending issue. Tyler I don't think had his best game, but he also, you know, played really well at times. But the team had breakdowns, and the next night they corrected them. But it was a good it was a good battle. It was a 1-1 game, and until they scored a power play goal late. But they're a really good team, and they're fun to play. I think our guys would rather play them every night rather than Corpus Christi or any other team because it's just run and gun hockey, and it kind of fits our style a little bit better. And it's entertaining. If I'm a fan watching that game, I think it's probably one of the best opponents we could possibly play. And if, you know, hopefully we're going to have to get through them to get out of the division, I'm assuming, to get to the Robbie Cup, and I think we'll be ready for them. But I love playing against them because they're good, and they have good goaltending. They have a lot of veteran players, and they go hard all the time, and they have a ton of speed. So you gotta play well to beat them.
Why'd you cut the hair?
It was a lot. It was just too much to handle. You wake up every morning, half of it's down.
Like this.
Like this side will be down, this side will be up. It was just too much after a while.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
It got annoying after a while.
So there was no peer pressure from a parent or some female or.
Well, no. My mom's a hairdresser, and she's the only person that's ever cut my hair, so I had to do it when I was home. Last time I did it, so I'll probably get it trimmed again when I go home tomorrow.
And so you have no intention of letting it sprout further
I don't know.
anymore?
Maybe next year it'll probably be back, but not this year. Not anytime soon at least.
So tell me a little bit about some of your hockey experience, where you played before you came to Topeka. First off, just start off like how you got started. Like I asked Joe his introduction to the game. Tell me how you got started playing hockey and the path that brought you here.
Well, my mom's father was really into hockey when he was like younger, and my older brother played, so I kind of just went following their footsteps really, and I was kind of just put into it. The city I'm from is a huge hockey community, so it's kind of just how I got started.
And so where did you play the last couple seasons?
I played high school in Michigan, Trenton High School.
Okay, and what was it that brought you to Topeka? Was it contacted by a scout, or did you go to a camp, or what happened?
Yeah, the school that Dom Lutz played for, their coaches were a scout for Topeka, and they approached me after one of our games against them. They're like, we really like you, and they told me how they scouted for Topeka, and I was like, yeah, it'd be great. And then I got drafted here in the summer, so kind of just all played out.
At what point did you know that maybe playing juniors was in your future?
Probably like my junior year in high school. I started getting approached by some teams, and I was like, all right. Like I never really would have thought about that before. Like my sophomore year, I had no intentions, and then it was just like they started coming at me, and I was just like, yeah, it sounds fun.
I imagine though in that high school it was fairly common for some of the guys, the upperclassmen that you watched play. You know, they were being picked up and they were moving on to junior teams or maybe colleges. So yeah. I guess you maybe thought, well, I guess it could happen. So when you found out that Topeka was going to be your destination, what did you think Topeka was going to be like? Did you have any idea? Had you researched anything? Or?
No, I had no clue. I thought about the Wizard of Oz. That's all I thought about. I was like, I had no clue.
No one ever does that.
I had no clue what I was coming into. I was excited though. It was just a new place, a lot of great experience.
So what's been the biggest change for you since you've been here, as far as, I don't know, maybe for you personally, or maybe as far as the way you approach the game?
It's a lot faster. It's different being away from home. Like, it's the first time I've been away from home. It was hard at first, but I really learned to enjoy it. Like, once you start rolling with the boys and playing games and stuff, it's a lot of fun. You really start liking it.
What's your favorite thing to do when you're not doing something hockey related?
I don't know. I lay in my bed and watch Netflix a lot.
Laying in bed and watch Netflix. What's your go-to on Netflix? Are you a series guy, or do you watch movies?
Yeah, I kill series.
Okay, so name a couple of your top series that you've watched during this season since you've been here.
I've watched Family Guy. I've watched American Dad. I've watched Futurama. I watched a lot of series. A lot.
Crush it.
Bad.
You binge watch them?
Yeah.
On the bus, do you binge watch them?
No, I watch them on the road when we're in the hotel rooms on my computer, but not on the bus.
So tell me about the line combinations, and who have been some of the guys that are most fun for you to play with, guys that you just click with?
I really like, the past few weekends I've been playing with Cam and Johnny Walker, and I really enjoyed that. They're great. They really move the puck well. They have great vision, so it's a lot of fun playing with them. They're really skilled, and it's just easy to play with them.
You know, it's pretty evident when people watch Roadrunner hockey, they see you and probably Andrew Hart, maybe two of the quickest guys on the team. Have you always been one of the quicker guys on your teams, or is that even something that you've thought about?
Oh yeah, I've usually been one of the faster guys. It's like it's fun to go fast, you know.
What's more fun, going fast, hitting people, or scoring goals?
I don't know. I like scoring goals a lot, but it's always fun to lay a hit on somebody.
Definitely. Tell me about some of your long-term aspirations. Where do you see yourself in 2 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And where do you see yourself when your hockey career is done?
I'm hoping to go play Division I college hockey somewhere, and then after getting a degree, hopefully being a physical therapist or an occupational therapist.
And what led you to that?
I've always wanted to be a physical therapist, and last year I broke my wrist and had some surgery on it, so I had to go through some therapy to rehab it, and I really enjoyed how they did it, and I found it really interesting, so I just kind of found it interesting, so I'm just going with it.
Can't go wrong with that. Hey, how are you feeling about the state of the Roadrunners as you move forward? You got a big series coming up next week, traveling to Lone Star. They're in second place. That's pretty much the next hurdle that you would have to overcome to try to move into second place. How are you feeling about the way the guys are clicking right now? Are things kind of going in the right direction, like Joe mentioned?
Yeah, I think we're on track. We just gotta put more games together. Like we can't come out one night just awful and then just expect to come out great the next night. Like it just needs to be an every night thing. I know we all talk about it a lot, and it's just something that's just gotta become like second nature, like you said. Like once you start doing things right, it's gonna be a lot more fun, and then we're just gonna start winning games, and it's just gonna roll.
Just gonna roll. So that's the part we're looking forward to, right, Roadrunner Nation?
Yeah.
All right, guys. So Quinn, thanks for coming and visiting with us today, and we'll be watching you next week.